enough to hold the animal always, for whatever reason. So you can hang, hoist it, drag it around, do everything by its Achilles tendons. We have this thing hanging in the air, so it's hard to get around this one spot of the animal. So you tend to always let the hair on. But you can see there what the animal is covered in is very thick bristles. So this is all been scraped. But what I'll do is just trim away some of the outside stuff. That all goes to the compost. We compost all the excess from the slaughter that we don't have other use for. And we add enough wood chips to the compost always that it makes it break down very quickly without rotting. So then we're going to take that Achilles tendon off now. And I've got, these are my main tools: a boning knife, a butcher knife, a meat saw, and a honing rod. And that's how we do pretty much everything. So what you want to do is you want to be trying to just saw through the bone. And then you cut everything else. You don't want to be sawing through meat because that makes a lot of saw, like bone meat dust. And so the knife is the much better instrument for cutting through things. So now that clean that up, the very first thing I tend to do is remove the tenderloin. And feel free to ask questions or whatever. I'll just talk through the process. But does anybody know what the tenderloin is? Well, yeah, I mean, so people have cooked tenderloins before?
Yep.
Okay, does anybody know where we might find the tenderloin? Close. So the loin, this is a lot of confusion. The loin is a section that runs right down the back from about here to here, and we'll get into that. And it's on the outside of the backbones, which you can see there. So when I've cut it in half, I've split its spine, and the loin is on the outside. So that's commonly referred to as the loin, but it's called other things. So when it's chopped up, it's called pork chops on a pig, or on beef, it's called ribeye steaks and New York strip steaks. But that's all this major section called the loin. The tenderloin is this really particular muscle. It's on goats, it's on lambs, it's on pork, it's on beef, and it's embedded on the inside of the spine. And that's why it's the tenderloin. It's this weird little muscle that does almost nothing, so it ends up being very tender. So it's hidden right here, and it's very small, so there's only two of them. So on this whole animal, and likewise a beef, but that's going to be a bit more like that, you've got this one little strip of muscle called the tenderloin. So what I do is I free it up with my knife. So you can see here I've got it down to the bone and it's coming free. And it's nice to have a sort of bendy boning knife for this, because then your knife will follow that curve. Otherwise you're cutting out little bits of the good meat as you pass by. And so I'm a self-taught butcher. I've done this for 11 years now, and a lot of these things are just about like repetition. So it's like you can do these things and you might not do the best job, but so what? So you lost a little bit of the tenderloin when you tried to do it your first time. Well, that's the worst thing that happened, you know what I mean? So then you go back and you go, oh, actually, I realize now it's a little deeper. I need to come down a little bit further next time, see? So then you get down into that the next time and you don't make that same mistake. So it's just about repeating and repeating, and then you get better and better and quicker at doing it. So I know from experience that there's a bone right here that I hit. It's the inside of the pelvis. And so I'm going to carve along that, and then it just ends here. So I can cut straight off through there. And then the tenderloin has sort of a special head, like it gets wider, it dips right there. So if you can take that a little bit off too. But if you miss something like that, not a big deal. You know what I mean?
Is that whole thing the tenderloin?
This is the tenderloin cut, but I can't sell this because it's got lymph nodes on it, it's got connective tissue on it, and if you took this home and cooked it, then you'd be mad at me. You'd be like, why was this tenderloin not like the other ones I'm expecting, you know? But of course, all this could be a lot cheaper if everybody knew how to do these things themselves, and then we just, whoop, we're done. That would be I think in the old-fashioned world of butcher shops, that was much more common, that you could choose how much do you want to get done for you versus how much do you want to do.
How much do you think this hog weighed?
Probably upper 300s, but I'm not positive. I don't really have a way of verifying. So there's this thick piece of silver skin right on top of the tenderloin. Do you see that? This piece here. So it's very chewy. So we're looking, when we're butchering these things, we're looking for the things that are going to be a problem for you to be able to just go ahead and cook it, And, well, essentially, I would say the practice of this is doing two main things, and that is separating these things into cuts that you can just cook hot and fast with very little preparation or time, and other things that you can cook slow and low, and that there's no worry about what's there. So the silver skin, the joints, they'll all break down under slow, low heat. So if you're going to have a piece that you're going to cook that way, it really doesn't matter. All that stuff will come off, but something like a tenderloin that you're going to want to just sear and eat, just slice and eat, you need it to be in a condition that it's going to be, everything's ready to go. So we went from what we had there to this. So now when you sear, you can sear all the sides, bring it to the temperature you like, and then just slice it. And every part is going to be tender and not have stuff on it, Would you mind grabbing this, washing this up a bit, and I'll start throwing those cuts in it.
What goes in here?
So this is going to be grind.
Soda sauce.
So, that was good. Yes. So the other aspect of this is people always have that sort of joke, like you don't want to see sausage getting made. But I feel like maybe not in giant commercial meat, but when you're talking about a one hog butchering operation, the sausage getting made means taking good quality meat and throwing it through a grinder and adding really nice seasoning to it. And that's it. That's all it means,
Yeah.
So, in fact, I think the sausage is incredibly appetizing. But I think in massive commercial operations where you have thousands of little parts that are gross or seen as gross, you can just keep adding all those parts. Thanks, we'll just put it over there. Yeah. So you could just keep adding all the little nasty things, like in hot dogs or whatever. But when you're going to make one hog, butcher a hog into parts and make sausage out of it, you're just going to use good meat. That's all that there is,
Do you ever think about the fat ratio?
We do, but we don't tend to get too technical about that.
Yeah.
And I feel like, the way I view it is every animal's different. So if it's a bit fattier, I want to put more fat in because I don't want to be restricted by having to trim it down to this exact ratio every time.
Yeah.
Or if it's leaner, it ends up leaner. But we definitely have to remove fat from a hog generally. It's not all going to go in there.
And do you render most of that, or not?
Yeah, so what we remove, we either render or we add it to our beef sausage, or other people who want things done. Often people want to bring deer here and they always want pork fat. Okay,
Do
so
what? They bring deer?
yeah, they get cut up, and
Oh, to
you know they're
process
really
here.
lean. Yeah, so then we'll
And
add
you add the pork.
pork fat to it. So this right here is called the leaf lard. It's on the inside of the animal, and it's between its organs and the belly, which it turns into bacon. And you can see once I got it started, it's pretty tough, but I can pull it so it pulls free. And this is like a really special fat that like restaurants cut out. So that is almost always extra on a hog. We almost always have to remove that unless it's a very lean animal. In fact, we did two the other day that were so lean that they were looking for fat when they were done. And we were able to add some from somebody else's pig because their sausage was so lean. So that comes out. So now you can have a view in here. We've lost the tenderloin, we've lost the leaf lard. And now we're going to separate this animal into three main parts. Pork almost always gets separated into three main parts. The cutting choices of how you're going to cut this up have to do a lot also with commercial, how are things sold.
Yeah.
But there's somewhat about logic as to how does this animal separate based on its muscles, and I think that's the more important way of viewing it. So what we're really aiming to do is isolate the loin, that nice other piece that's not the tenderloin, and the belly, which we want to turn into bacon, because everybody likes pork chops and bacon. So essentially when we take off this part called the ham, and when we take off this part called the shoulder, we're trying to do it at a location that preserves as much of the loin and the belly as possible, but stay true to like actually being good cuts. So one other thing is beef is essentially the same thing, it's just much bigger. So you have the opportunity to isolate muscles and treat them differently, but it has the same anatomy.
You do cows here too?
Uh-huh. So when they make you cut a beef loin much smaller based on like meat cutting, like we can do whatever we want basically. But if you were to follow, like if you needed a butcher shop or something, you're forced to cut it smaller, which makes sense because that's where the actual true loin muscle runs. In pork, they're for some reason allowed to extend it as far out as possible and still call all this the same thing. So I don't like to follow the most extreme version that's recommended. So if you ever want to do this yourself and you see like recommendations, they might tell you to cut from here all the way to the second rib. And I don't think that's like the most true to the animal's cut. So I come in a little bit on each side, but I don't come in as far as beef. So when we separate the ham, you can see the turn of the pelvis. If you come like a couple fingers right there, that's where you want to cut. But that's bone, so I can't cut it. So I take my saw and I slide right in there. And it's not very deep. It's just the tip right there. And the rest of this I can do with a knife. So now we've got a whole ham. And I'll go put this in the walk-in so it's out of the way. And we'll come back to it. But this is the ham primal as a whole ham, as opposed to like what's a cut ham for sale.